Good morning, everyone, and welcome in here to the Powercat Postgame podcast. I am Carmody. With me is Monte Spiller as Kansas State finds a way to defeat Colorado 31-28 last night. Monty, I don't know. We just talked before we started recording. If you slept, I can tell you right now that I didn't sleep that well, but it doesn't matter because Kansas State found a way to get the win. We're going to talk about that game. We're going to recap the game. You'll hear our reactions, Monty, but give me your initial thoughts because, oh my goodness, that might have been one of the most fun games I've watched in a really long time.
No, it definitely lived up to its billing. It's one of those things. We talked about it the week before of all the superstars on the sideline, all the talk about the Sanders boys, Shadur, Shiloh, Coach Prime, K-State, and our quote-unquote superstars. But it was definitely worth staying up as late as I did. And I was so excited about the win. I wanted to go to bed immediately, but I couldn't. So
it's crazy because the amount of fanfare that this game got, you sit here and you think, all right, well, you're so used to watching Colorado when they're playing other teams. And last year it was kind of that experience to where this is really cool. Look at all these NBA players. Look at all these rappers. Look at all these guys that are supporting Deion Sanders in Colorado. It's really cool. And you're sitting there and you're going, you know what? I think I could get used to this in the Big 12. And then when the team that you cover, the team that you played for in your case, finally actually gets a chance to go toe-to-toe with them, it's kind of a weird feeling because I found myself sitting there and I was sitting there and I'm like, well, there's another team. And I thought that, give credit to ESPN. I actually thought they did a good job of covering K-State as well as Colorado. I wasn't necessarily anticipating that going into the game. There were some cool things that they did. Avery Johnson, talking about Avery Johnson. It was kind of tacky in the beginning, but you know what? I was with it. I thought that was kind of cool. But the amount of stars that were out on Saturday, I mean, it really, really was kind of a surreal experience.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's one of those things where that's the prime effect, as they
Yep.
say. He's well known, not in just the sports world, but he's known all over the world. And I got to give it to him. He does a great job of promoting Colorado and the university and their athletics. And so kudos to them because that does have the Big 12. You don't have to be a fan of him or of his, or you can be a fan of his, but he does a good job of bringing more fanfare and more publicity to the Big 12. So that's definitely a positive.
It is. And, when we look at this situation of the game, especially with what has transpired throughout college football, I mean, you look at the rest of the Big 12 conference and BYU suddenly looks like a legitimate threat to win this conference. I think we kind of had an idea after the game against K-State that they were pretty good. They've found a way to rattle off some wins in a row now, including an absolute thumping of Arizona at home. But this game was really important because it kind of turned out and it kind of feels like the winner of this game moves into that upper echelon of teams that are going to have a legitimate chance to play in the Big 12 championship game. Finally, K-State found a way to get it done. But, I mean, going into this game, it really felt like this is a big-time game.
Oh, absolutely. And us and Colorado both knew that they both had a sense of urgency. You could tell they both understood that if you come out with the win, you're not set, but you're a lot more comfortable moving forward. And based on who we play next, a West Virginia team who lost to Iowa State, a really good Iowa State team, still undefeated. A lot of people forget about them, and they're flying under the radar. But it's one of those things for us to get that win and go into West Virginia next week, which we'll talk about that later. They're not a great run-stopping team. So that's something that I look forward to seeing for us as well and continuing to build on the game we had last night. But, yeah, big win for us. It puts us in the upper echelons of the conference, not necessarily in the driver's seat because we still have a lot of games to play, but we still have the goal of making it to the Big 12 championship at hand. It's still very reasonable. So that puts us in a really good position.
No doubt. And as we start to get into this game, we want to let everybody know if you have questions, if you have comments, go ahead and drop those into the comments box on YouTube. If you're watching on Twitter, comment. Some of you guys are doing that already. We'll try to get to as many of those as we can get to throughout the show. Monty, let's look at this game because I think that it was apparent very early on that K-State was going to be able to stop Colorado's rushing attack. And that was something that we talked about on this YouTube channel for literally the last 2 weeks. Colorado fans were in the comments, were in the Twitter mentions, and they refused to acknowledge the fact that Kansas State's offensive and defensive lines were far superior, and as a matter of fact, had an extreme advantage. I'll just say there were some videos of me being clipped where people had over 20,000 views saying that K-State having an extreme advantage was crazy. I don't know. It looked like an extreme advantage when Kansas State only gave up negative 29 rushing yards and ran the ball for almost 200 yards on the ground. But we're going to get into that. I want to talk about Colorado's inability to run the ball because, to me, yes, did Shedeur Sanders throw for over 300 yards? No doubt. Was this a close game? For sure. But their inability to run the ball, I actually think helped K-State because they knew, all right, well, we just got to cover now.
Yeah, absolutely. And then allowed K-State to keep a safety deep to help over the top with Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn. And that's one of those things where K-State understood we could defend their run with a traditional 3-man or 4-man front. And we played a few games early, and that worked out well. But it's one of those things where I knew, like, and we talked about it in the previous podcast, but people didn't understand K-State's D-line is a lot better than people give them credit for. And Colorado's O-line wasn't as good as people thought they were. They played a really average UCF team the week before, and they gave the Colorado fans a false sense of confidence. And they asked us, do we watch film? Yeah, we watch film. But understand, you can't put a team, an O-line, above our D-line based off of one game and previous opponents. We understand what we do. I made a comment to one of the fans. I said, I know our team. I know what we do. So no matter what you guys think Colorado was going to be able to do, I know what we do, and I know what we're capable of. And it's one of those things we play a lot. We talk about physicality. We were a lot more physical than they anticipated, and they found out real quick. But, yeah, the fact that we didn't have to stack the box to stop the run allows us to have extra guys in the back end to defend those prolific receivers that Colorado have, and it paid off in the long run.
No doubt. And you know what? Acknowledge this at the top of the show. Colorado was not fully healthy. Jimmy Horn and Travis Hunter being hurt, I mean, that played a major role in this game. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That played a major role in this game. But the thing is, both teams dealt with injuries. Kansas State lost its starting quarterback. Well, they did lose their starting quarterback for a little bit, but they lost their starting cornerback in Jacob Parrish, who is playing at an all-conference level. That's a guy that's going to play on Sundays. They lost him due to some friendly fire. Marquise Siegel had a legitimate injury, had to miss some time. Okay, like Keenan Garber cramped up, all in the span of 5 plays. And so I know Colorado fans were booing, but to me, I mean, that just shows you their lack of football knowledge, especially when DJ Giddens gets a first down on a 4th and 1 from the 2-yard line and the crowd goes crazy. But like, injuries are a part of the game. And you know what? Maybe it's wrong, but I attribute some of these injuries that Colorado sustained to the physicality level that Kansas State was playing with. Now, hits are going to happen and people are going to get injured, but they were in Travis Hunter. They were all up in his grill. They showed on the replay. I mean, Jace Brown blocking him out of bounds and him and Travis Hunter going at it. I mean, they were hitting him on offense and on defense. Not saying that knocked him out of the game, but this was a physical football game. And Monty, I just don't know if Colorado was prepared for that.
They weren't. And I guarantee their coaches preach physicality. And yeah, you think you're practicing physically until you really go up against a team who is truly physical across the board. And it's one of those things where K-State, we played enough physical games this year and in years past to understand true physicality. And going back, yeah, Travis Hunter, them losing him was huge. But people act like K-State came out fearful. If you forget, I mean, if you remember the first drive, we throw right at him on a slant, and we didn't shy from him. The announcers are like, that's surprising. Most people go away from Travis Hunter. K-State went at him. We didn't care. And when he made catches, we tackled him with purpose. Not, it wasn't anything dirty, but we finished the play with physicality. And so it's one of those things, yeah, it sucks for Colorado that he got hurt because he is a game changer. One of the best in the nation, if not the best. But the fact that he went out, I'm not going to apologize for it. And people talk about their fans say we didn't have Hunter, we didn't have Horn. But last time I looked, I didn't see Travis Hunter playing D-line. I didn't see Jimmy Horn playing linebacker. Talk to me about that.
Yep, I agree. And you know what? We've got Coach Barry here in the comments. Appears to be a Colorado fan. First of all, thanks for watching. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I know that after your team loses, it can be tough. So consuming the content, being on this channel. I really appreciate you guys watching. You know what? I do agree with that. Like, Travis Hunter was the only one that got hit hard. But again, we just go back to it. Injuries are a part of the game. I mean, Jacob Parrish, friendly fire in the secondary. And so it's part of the game. Does it suck that these guys weren't able to play? It does. I mean, that's what makes this game great, is when you have those outstanding players. But I mean, from everything Colorado has, the whole way and the whole reason Colorado's been good is due to their depth at their skill positions. And those guys balled out. So would Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horton have made a difference? 100%. But I'm not convinced that they would have been the difference in Colorado winning the game. It's so easy to go back and say that, but I'm not really here for that narrative, because I feel like both teams dealt with the injuries. Both teams had to adjust on the fly. And you're right. What won this game for Kansas State, honestly, was their ability to rush the football. And that brings us to our first super chat of the day from Ben. Appreciate the super chat. Remember, if you send us a super chat, you will jump to the front of the line with your question. He asks, did this game have an old school feeling to you, Monty? I'll let you take this one.
It did. Outside of the fanfare and the celebrities pregame, it definitely had it. When the game came on, seeing the stadium there, it took me back to my days and pregame warming up and the fans coming in and them having Ralphie out there. And you just understood that. And there was a time where Colorado and K-State were both pretty good teams. And you knew that it was going to be a physical game, a game where whoever out-schemed each other would make it happen. But it was definitely more old school. It wasn't as many points as I think a lot of people expected, but it was definitely a bend but don't break on both sides. And like I said, both teams never quit. And it was one of those situations where we were up 21-7, and I felt comfortable, but I knew Colorado had the history of coming back late. They've done it for like the last 3 weeks and finding a way to either get back in the game and win it or get back in the game and making it close. So I didn't feel comfortable enough where I'm like, okay, we're good. And sure enough, late in the game, when we throw an interception, I'm like, here we go, Yep. And then Colorado's fans are going and then they score. But I will tell you, when they scored and we were down, that was a calm about me. That was one of the things where I didn't think, man, we found a way to blow the game. I was like, you know what? They left enough time. We got a chance. And sure enough, it worked out for us. So, but no, it definitely felt like an old school Big 8, Big 12 game. See, I was fortunate enough, I played in the Big 8 and the Big 12. That's how old I am.
It did feel like an old school game. And I'm going to say this too, Monty. It felt like an old school game because this was kind of chippy. I mean, these guys were getting after it. And, I think that we kind of talked about that on the Friday walkthrough. Is like, there's going to be some guys that are chirping at Dylan. And I found it kind of interesting because it wasn't the guys on defense, because that defense is completely retooled, but it was the guys on special teams, because those are the guys that he came in with in that recruiting class. Those are the redshirt freshmen. Those are the true sophomores that are playing special teams for Colorado. And they were the ones that were kind of giving Dylan a hard time. I think that's part of the game. And they asked Dylan after the game, what was it like to get into the end zone? And he was like, it was everything. Like, that's what he wanted to do. He didn't have a rushing touchdown at home last year, and to do that in front of the student section, you could tell that it meant a lot to Dylan. But I want to kind of dive into this matchup a little bit more. We've talked about the secondary, and I want to look at why Kansas State was so good at rushing the football. I mean, DJ Giddens was absolutely outstanding, rushing for over 180 yards. I mean, Colorado had not given up a 100-yard rusher the entire season, and DJ got that in the first half. I mean, he was on another level, and I feel bad for Shiloh Sanders because, man, like he was embarrassing him. But it was obvious that was the strategy, right? Shiloh Sanders had been out for a number of weeks. This was his first game back. K-State was willing to have DJ go one-on-one with Sanders, make him work on run fits, and they were willing to take that matchup, DJ Giddens one-on-one with Sanders, and multiple times DJ just made him look silly.
Yeah, he did, and honestly, giving DJ credit, I think it could have been any safety back then.
Yes, I agree.
And the results would have been the same. Shiloh just happened to be the victim last night, but it's one of those things where we talked about it last week. I don't think people realize how well our offense lines are on duo blocks and zone blocks and disguising things. And DJ, and I think the rest of the world, or everybody who was up last night, found out real quick how good of a back he is. And a lot of time people say, yeah, he's mid to average, but he's very patient with his runs. But when he hits the hole, he hits the hole. And then when he meets with contact, He doesn't normally go down one hit. Ask Shiloh about that. And he also has the ability to make you miss an open field. There's one run early. He made several guys miss, Shiloh included, Travis Hunter included. And he was kind of like business as usual. He handed the ball to the official, went back to the huddle, didn't chirp. He was like, "This is what I do." And we call him a silent assassin, and he did what he does. So yeah, he had a great game, definitely MVP, and I just love watching him play.
He's so good, and I think he's such an easy kid to root for because of his attitude. And anybody who's watched K-State for a number of seasons understands that. And how lucky have K-State fans been with running backs? I mean, to go from Deuce Vaughn to DJ Giddens to Dylan Edwards being the next running back at K-State, that's quite the run of backs. But DJ might be the best of them just because of his ability to make you miss, but also run you over. I think sometimes it plays into his advantage because defenders are expecting him to lower the boom and truck you. Well, when he throws a juke move and you're anticipating to get run over, you're going to fall back on your heels. And that's what happened a number of times. I was really impressed. But you mentioned the offensive line, and let's kind of talk about them because, I mean, shout out to the offensive line. It is not easy to run the ball when everybody knows you want to run the ball. And yes, they did stack the box at the end of the game, which is why Kansas State had to throw it. But when they had 6 and 7 guys in the box and K-State had 6 and 7 blockers, they were able to run the football. And again, that would mean, if we're just doing math here, Monty, if there's 7 guys in the box, you have 7 blockers, everybody has to be good in order for that run play to work. And more times than not, they were.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's one of those things where our offensive line, we've been watching them enough this year. They're finally clicking as a unit. There are times where we'll have a good play here, a good play there, then one guy screw up, or a good play here and good play there, then a false start. And last night, I feel like they were on one accord. And also, I caught myself watching the tight ends, and they, whenever we had run game, they were getting to the next level, getting hats on linebackers, and it made it hard for anybody to touch our running backs until they were almost 4 or 5 yards down the field. And then at that point, it's one-on-one with the safety. And if you get 5 yards every other play, you're winning football games. And that's what they did. But our O-line was physical. They finished blocks. And it was one of those things where they looked at each other like, we know what we're doing. The game plan we have in hand is working. Let's keep doing what we do and basically take the fight to them. And that's our O-line, and the coaches tell you before, they imposed our will on Colorado's D-line. Colorado D-line, they're athletic, but I don't think they were accustomed to several plays over and over and over, run the ball left, run the ball right, because you get breaks when a team has a pass, you can pass rush. But when you have to play run defense, that's tough in case they impose their will.
They did. Abe brings up a good point on the topic of the offensive line. He said the beefs up front love to run, but pass blocking needs some work, especially in the first half. I mean, credit to Colorado because they were able to get to Avery Johnson. It felt like K-State was able to do whatever they wanted to offensively, and then Colorado started to turn up the heat. They got pressure by blitzing, and it took us a while to adjust, but I felt like Kansas State's offensive line, if there is any negative throughout this whole game, it is that. And looking ahead, they're going to have to shore that up because the pass blocking, that is something that will come back to bite you. Just ask Colorado, and we'll talk about the defense in a little bit. But, I mean, it was a little concerning to see Colorado get some pressure and actually get Avery Johnson to the ground because that's not something we've been accustomed to seeing.
Yeah, Abe, you're absolutely correct on that. I agree with you 100%. The O-line has to shore up the pass block. But on the flip side, too, Avery's internal clock has to speed up a little bit, too. I'm not sure if the coaches have told him to try to stay in the pocket and find an open man, run at the last minute. But I feel like several times last night, he had two-way lanes where he could have took off and ran. And I felt like he pulled a Shador. He wanted to keep the play alive as long as possible when he had opportunities to go. You know, and that's easy for me to say I want there, but watching from TV, I felt like he had opportunities to run the ball and get some positive yards rather than taking a sack. And a lot of times when the O-line kicks out the DN, step up in the pocket a little bit. I felt like he floated back and allowed more the defensive end to get a better angle. But if we sit on film, we'll make adjustments. I have faith in our coaching staff, but you are absolutely correct on that. Our O-line has to do better in pass block because some team we're going to see that's going to do a good job against the run. And we're going to need to go to the pass, and we need that to be a strong suit moving forward. But he's absolutely correct on that.
No doubt. And you know what? I think Avery Johnson, what a performance by the young quarterback. I know that I can speak for probably every single person watching this video, minus maybe Coach Barry at this point. Appreciate you still staying in this and listening about the game. But it felt like when Avery Johnson went out of the game, the whole dynamic changed, especially on the broadcast when they brought up the potential of it being an abdominal injury, maybe similar to the one that Quinn Ewers suffered. I think everybody's sitting there going, oh, yeah, that makes sense. He didn't get hit. That must be what it was. When in reality, it was maybe just a bruised hip is what Avery kind of talked about after the game. But either way, he threw the ball, delivered a nice seam route right down the middle, caught by Jace Brown, immediately goes down to the ground. And when they showed that replay, I don't know about you, Monty, but I was thinking, oh, no, this is not good because Kansas State lives on the ground, no doubt, but they live through their quarterback number 2. And this is the first time that we got to see Taquan Roberson, the backup transfer from UConn, who spent time at Penn State, the highly regarded guy, the veteran, come in to replace the young gun. And you know what? That might have been the difference in the game because when Taquan Roberson came in the game, he kind of calmed everything down. It reminded me, Monty, of 2022, only the opposite of when when Adrian Martinez got hurt, Will Howard came in and got hurt, and then they brought in Jake Rubley, the redshirt freshman quarterback, and who immediately threw an interception, and the game was over after that. But the inverse happened, and I think that's the difference between having a veteran quarterback and a young quarterback as your backup. And goodness, I mean, it really paid off because Taquan Roberson might be the hidden MVP of this game.
Absolutely. And it speaks volumes about him. I've had the opportunity to see him in practices before the season and during the season. And he's cool, man. I'm telling you what, when he came in, I was like, we're okay. Because I've seen him throw the ball, but the kid can run too. And he's a veteran and he's been in big games. So that game wasn't going to rattle him. And it tells you a lot about our coaching staff because they didn't go in there and just shut down the offense. They allowed him to throw 2 passes, one of them that should have been caught, the first one, and they both were on the money. So that lets you know the coaching staff have no concern about him coming in and not being able to produce what they normally do. So that's positive moving forward. If something were to happen to Avery, God willing that it doesn't, but if it was, we have a capable backup for the future. But like you said, that kept the momentum going. Avery comes back, we get a touchdown, and that could be a pivotal point, or was a pivotal point in the game.
Yeah, he made a nice throw to Jace Brown. I think it was an out route on 3rd down. Jace Brown just absolutely torched the guy he was that was covering him, ran an out route, and Roberson delivered the ball on the money. I mean, that's a tough throw to make because he had to throw kind of across the field on an out route. Very easily could have maybe left that ball slide towards the field and potentially have been an interception. But I mean, credit to Taquan Roberson. This is a guy who was unfazed, who came into the game. And you're right, Monty. Like, I mean, K-State scored a touchdown on that drive, which was one of the best drives of the game, if not the best drive of the game, coming out of the locker room to start the second half. I was really impressed with Roberson. But you know what? I was really impressed. We talked about Jace Brown. Talk about him for a second because this is a guy who just seems to show up and make big plays. Over 100 yards receiving on the night, 2 touchdowns, none bigger than the one at the end of the game. But it felt like whenever Kansas State needed to make a play on offense, if they weren't going to be able to run the ball because Colorado had taken the run away, then Avery was going to throw to his roommate, to his buddy, fellow sophomore Jace Brown.
Yeah, and he's our deep threat, and him and Avery have that bond. They're roommates, as you just alluded to, and they communicate verbally, but with body language, not so with words, but they understand. Quarterback, wide receiver relationship, certain guys just know they give each other a look. You know what I'm doing, and that's one of those things that continue to build on that and his confidence. And I saw last night where Avery said, prior to they threw the fade route to our right, and he overthrew him, and they came right back to it, and the fact that Jace was smart enough to slow down, absorb the contact, and get the catch, and then score what was the winning touchdown speaks about their maturing levels on both ends, and the fact that they could do that in a hostile environment made me smile. I was happy for him personally, but I was even more happy that it was a winning touchdown. So no, he's growing up, and him and Avery are going to be a dynamic duo over the season and for next year moving forward as well. So let's see what happens with that.
Yeah, I tweeted this out, but it kind of felt like maybe a star was born on Saturday with Avery Johnson. From going out of the game, you see him holding this side, running back to the locker room, to running back out onto the field, putting a helmet on, scoring a touchdown on a pass to Jace Brown, that drive, and then throwing the interception, which we'll talk about that in a second. But throwing the interception and setting up a Colorado touchdown to where I think everybody's thinking this game's over. And having the gall to come back, hit DJ Giddens on a swing route, and then throw a 50-yard bomb to the aforementioned Jace Brown to eventually win the game. I mean, it really felt like we were watching a duel between two of the better quarterbacks in the country. And that ball to Jace Brown was right on the money. He beat his man one-on-one. There was still pass interference, great catch, but the ball was right on the money. He never broke stride and ran it for the end zone. It really felt like, we've talked about it before, Avery Johnson just kind of has that it factor. And when the game is on the line the next time, Avery Johnson is going to use that experience that he just got at Colorado and be even better for it. And so the fact that this game happened in the middle of his first season as a starter, it to me kind of felt like this was the first defining moment of Avery Johnson's career. We all go back in football and look at specific moments for quarterbacks, specifically quarterbacks, other players, but specifically quarterbacks, and say, we circle and say, this is when they took off. I have a feeling, Monty, that we're going to look back on this game and say, this is the night that Avery Johnson went from being a good quarterback to a great quarterback.
Yeah, and you want these games early, and you want these games for our young guys. And we're a young team. I don't think people really realize how young we are. Yeah. We have so many new starters on the offensive line. Avery's a true sophomore. Jace, true sophomore. DJ is a junior. Dylan's a true sophomore. And it's one of those things where we've not had like a lot of big game experience. The first one was at BYU, and you see how that went. And we could have easily laid down the following week, but we didn't. And we kept building on it. And then last night game was another step. So, yeah, a star could have been born with that. And I feel like he's going to take that confidence into West Virginia next week. But we needed that pressure, Mm-hmm. I had a high school coach. He always tell me, being able to have that pressure is a privilege. And the fact that he's smiling through it, celebrating with his buddies, the pressure in the game is not too big for him or his teammate. And it's funny, I want to go back a little bit. I knew right away we were comfortable because when we got a sack early in the game, our guys came up and did the wristwatch thing like Shadur. And it was taunting, but not at them. But they were letting Colorado fans know, hey, we're not intimidated by this environment. And then when Avery scored, he did the Deion dance. And they let me know right now, our guys aren't intimidated. They're there to have fun. They're there to win the game, and they were loose. So I knew they were confident at that point. But then the fact that we were able to drive the field and win the game, this basically verified what I thought initially. And they did a great job. So I'm proud of those guys.
It was kind of one of those moments when those guys started to celebrate. You felt like, okay, they hear the outside noise. They hear what people are saying about Colorado and how everybody is on board with this Buffalo team and nobody's talking about K-State. And you know what? I think there's some truth to that because everybody on College Game Day picked Colorado to win. If you look at the betting lines, all of the public money was on Colorado. Was K-State the favorite in this game? They were. Were they the ranked team? Yes. But everybody was picking Colorado to win this game. And I think Kansas State kind of took that personally. And so that was pretty cool to see. There's some comments going on in our comment section, so we might as well bring this up. Monty, I'm curious what you thought. The faking the injuries has been a big topic in college football. Ole Miss has been notorious for doing that. The last few weeks, they've been called out. They actually released a statement saying that they're not doing it. But everybody seems to think they are. I don't typically think fans should be a big storyline in this game. But when it's pretty apparent that guys aren't faking injuries, I don't necessarily think it's a good thing for fans to boo. As a player, I'm just kind of curious your opinion on that. I mean, you don't fake injuries, especially when you're a starter in the secondary in a close game.
No, last night's game, it was just one of those freak nights where the back-to-back injuries happen. And if anybody who watched the game from home, you could see the replays. They were all legitimate injuries. When the guy cramped up, Garber cramped up, you can see his leg not up on TV. I've been there before. That I don't care who you are, that's going to drop you. And then when our two players ran into each other, bigger guy ran into a smaller guy, that was legit. You can see he wasn't quite there. That wasn't something you fake. And then I'm not sure what the other one, I can't remember what the other one was, but replay all showed that it was legitimate injuries that occurred, and we weren't trying to slow the game down. It wasn't like Colorado was going hurry up. So it's when teams are tired and the offense is going hurry up when teams fake injuries. And like you said, it's normally a D lineman that could be covered up and replaced pretty easily and not be affected. Secondary wise, we're not going to have a secondary guy fall and have somebody that's a lesser player or a backup come in because of that. That doesn't make any sense. I don't care who you are. That's not reasonable. So, and then going back to the fans booing, I get it. Every fan base have those fans that are going to boo. So I don't look at Colorado's entire fan base. I get that because every fan base has it. But for those ones who are booing, know the game, understand what's going on, and just don't boo just a boo. You know what I mean? And I know it's going to happen no matter where you go. But yeah, K-State's not one of those teams. I know Coach Kleiman wouldn't go for that, and it's something that happened. But it was a freak accident that they happened back to back to back. So what do you do?
Yeah. I also agree with this comment. The secondary needs to get better. And you know what? I agree. I think we've talked about it before. Shedeur Sanders and that wide receiving core is legitimate. They might be one of the best quarterback receiver duos in the country. But I mean, K-State's secondary, there wasn't any big, huge plays. Was there a few down the field passes? There was. But I think it was kind of what we talked about, Monty. They didn't want to get beat deep. They were fine with giving up those middle crossing routes for 15, 20 yards because they knew that the pass rush could negate that on the very next play and get to Sanders. But I would agree with this. I mean, you know what? I don't necessarily think this is a negative comment. The secondary needs to get better. I don't think that's negative at all because there was guys who did get better. We talked about it. Zayshawn Rich, a true freshman from Minnesota, thrust into action. Nikendre Steiger, the Wichita East product, the safety, was just thrown in there. Some of these guys who, honestly, Monty, haven't played at all this year, were asked to get in there. I don't think this is a stretch to say the secondary needs to get better. And you know what? They're going to be able to learn from this and be better.
Yeah. No, last night, first of all, we got the win, but that comment is absolutely correct. You and I talk off air all the time, and I talk about how the secondary is not the secondary of old. There's no consistency, communication. Like the first touchdown that Colorado got, it wasn't because they were just better than us. The guy was running wide open. Communication. So I'm not sure what's really happening on the back end, but that needs to get fixed moving forward. And we need to have guys that are confident, not afraid to make plays, and not just backing up and letting everybody catch things underneath and then rally to the ball. And at some point, you're going to have to take a chance. You have to be aggressive. Yeah, you're going to get beat, but that's okay. But I guarantee if you're aggressive, if you're breaking on the ball, if you're coming up downhill, laying the wood, teams are not going to be as willing to throw the ball downfield. But right now, we're allowing people to catch the ball untouched. We're not rerouting guys. They have clean releases off the line, so it kind of defeats the purpose. Yeah, there are times when we do mix it up a little bit with the receivers, but it's not consistent. And that comment is absolutely correct. We have to get better if we want to make a run for the Big 12 championship. We have to get better.
So on that same token, though, I want to talk about the pass rush because to me, that's also if DJ Giddens and Avery Johnson and Jace Brown are storylines 1, 2, 3. I think that the pass rush should be right up there as well. Man, that was impressive. I mean, Brendan Mott is a guy who I think we kind of overlooked when he decided to come back this season. I mean, this is a guy who has some veteran experience, but all the talk was on about how good these young guys are. And the young guys were really good. But Brendan Mott was incredible on Saturday night. Multiple sacks, seemed like he was in there all the time. I mean, when K-State rushed 4, it felt like, especially when they went to the 4 down. Now, when they had the 3 down and they blitzed the linebacker, they didn't get as much pressure. But when they had the 4 down and they were able to kind of widen those defensive ends out and make them more legitimate rush ins like we see in the NFL, those guys were getting to the quarterback on, it felt like, every single play where Shedeur Sanders had to hold the ball longer than 2 seconds. There was a Kansas State defensive lineman right in his lap.
No, you're right. And it was fun to see Mott in this role, in this not new role, but normally they have him as a true linebacker, but they had him as a rush in last night. And like I always say, you can't stop the Mott. And he was coming downhill, hitting that edge, and he was getting held. And holding happens every play. But even the times he didn't get held, he was making Shedeur step up in the pocket or rushing him or get rid of the ball. He had a heck of a game. And it's one of those things where the fact that he could get pressure on his own, like we talked about before, allowed an additional safety, additional linebacker to drop into pass coverage to create more of a net in the deep downfield, and Shedeur had to hold on to the ball longer, which ultimately ended in incomplete pass, intentional grounding, or a sack. So Mott played a pivotal role on that defense early and often. So I was really happy to see him do what he did because he's more than capable. And like you said, he does get overlooked a lot, but that's okay. Keep overlooking him, and he keep making plays.
It was impressive. I mean, multiple. You don't really see multiple intentional groundings in the same game. It honestly felt like last year, Colorado, with how they were just letting guys get to the quarterback. I don't want to say I felt bad for Shedeur Sanders, but with the kind of game that he was having, I can imagine how difficult it is to continue to be as accurate and always have somebody in your face because your offensive line is just let's just call it what it is. They were bad last night. They weren't able to run the ball, and they couldn't protect the quarterback. That's horrible. I don't think it's a stretch to say that Colorado is the reason, or the Colorado offensive line is the reason why they lost. Monty, you go back to that third down. It was what, 3rd and 5,
yeah,
third and 4, and then there's a holding penalty which backs it up, and they throw 2 incompletions, and the game's over. I mean, there's the game. And it's because K-State was able to get pressure on the quarterback. Stats are only part of the equation. The stats were really good for K-State last night when it comes to rushing the passer. But the intentional grounding is not going to show up in the stat book, and neither is the holding calls. And quite frankly, neither is the constant pressure, which forces offensive coordinators to not throw down the field passes. Because if Shedeur Sanders has to take any kind of drop at all, they knew that the K-State defensive lineman was going to be right in his face.
Yeah, and it paid off early and it paid off late, like you said. And it's one of those things where, and that O-line they were ungood. They were not good last night. But Shedeur, being the ultimate competitor that he is, he put himself in some situations where he probably could have stepped up or got rid of the ball sooner. But instead, he tried to keep the play alive, prolong it. And one point, he rolled right into Mott, and he made the sack on him. But it's one of those things where he was so used to the pressure coming so fast, he panicked. You know, and it wasn't a panic of I'm afraid. It was a panic like, let me get out of here and make a play because his pocket is collapsing. And so, yeah, it made a big difference in the game. And hopefully that's something we can build off of moving forward. But we need to understand other offensive lines won't be as bigger liability as Colorado line was last night. But it paid off for us because Colorado is prolific with their skill guys. And if you give Shedeur time, he will pick you apart. But fortunate for us, we put pressure on him. He didn't have clean feet, and he had to get out of the pocket. So that was a big win for us last night.
And Monty, I want to get your opinion on this because this is something that when I was watching the game, I thought about this, and maybe I'm off here, but watching Deion Sanders manage the clock, it really feels like Deion comes from an NFL mindset. He comes from an NFL background. There's no doubt about it. But there were multiple times in the first half where it was 4th and 2 and it was 4th and 1. And they were not in opponent territory, but it was, in that 35 to 45 yard range to where if they would have gone for it and not gotten it, would it have been a big deal? It would have, but it wouldn't have killed them because it was a 1 possession game at the time. And so I was surprised that Colorado didn't try and go for it more often on 4th down. I feel like that's a very NFL thing to do. And you know what? There is more coaches who have more experience than Deion Sanders. Would they have gone for that? I don't know. But it sure felt like that there were multiple times where Deion Sanders could have gone for it on 4th down and opted to punt, which maybe they go down and get points, and that's the difference in the game. Did you kind of see that? And what did you think of Deion's management of really just the clock in general?
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. If you go back to the first quarter, prior to their first touchdown, they went for it on 4th down, and they were successful, and that paid off. But then I think Deion and his coaching staff realized how prolific our running game was, and he's thinking to myself, if we give these guys a short field, they're probably going to score anyway because they're running the ball with so much effectiveness. But I'm thinking, you know what? Let's punt the ball, hopefully get them in passing situations where we can make them get out of the pocket, stop the clock, save some time, go from there. And I'm almost wondering if that would play a role in it. But you're correct. With him being an NFL type guy, he's probably saying, let's play the odds, play the percentages, play the numbers, punt, and get them deep in their own territory, which they did actually. And I believe the guy got the ball like on a 4 or 5. So looking back, that was the right call. We eventually scored later on, but it's one of those things where you got to look at everything going forward. But I see what he was thinking.
Yep.
But college game, college environment, having young men and momentum plays a major role. I would have took a chance on it and went for the fourth. At least try to hard count us and see if we get them to jump. And if not, then punt it. But I heard what you're saying. Yeah, so it was up in the air. I don't think any answer was a wrong answer. So no matter what, but that was a tough position to be in at that point.
So this is a great point here by Elliot. Unsung hero last night was Austin Romaine being the spy against Shadur. First of all, great point. I was really impressed with Romaine. He didn't have all the tackles. You have to go back and look, but I really don't believe that any linebacker was the leading tackler. It was probably a secondary guy because of all the passing. But, I mean, that is a strategy that K-State has used in the past. And credit Austin Romaine because Sanders is not an easy guy to tackle. Now, he's not a guy who's going to get out and run for multiple yards down the field. He is more the prototypical NFL quarterback. But, I mean, employing a spy against Sanders ended up being a really good strategy because when Romaine needed to blitz, when he broke the pocket and he needed to keep contained, he was right there. I thought that was a really good strategy by Joe Klanderman, and credit to Austin Romaine.
Yeah, no, that's a great comment, and that's great game planning because, yeah, he was a spy, and the fact that we talked about it, Shadur loves to hold on to the ball. And Austin dropped back. He got his drops. He wasn't super deep drops, but he could still reroute crossers, or he was also in the way for anybody who might want to sit down in the middle. But then once the pocket rolled, he shadowed Shadur. And if he did get us out the pocket, and the one time he ran him down from behind and made a big tackle, which is huge. But yeah, that's a great point. And a lot of people might have missed that during the game. And he didn't get a lot of mentions because he was doing his job, and that's the difference between us and a team like Colorado. Colorado is full of superstars. They got some quality talent. But we're full of a bunch of guys who are disciplined, who don't need to have the limelight, don't need the pat on the back every play. Tell me my job, coach. I'm going to do it. We can get a win. And Austin Romaine is an example of that. He didn't need to be the big guy. He did his job, and he did it well.
Yeah. And again, you guys keep commenting. I'm loving this chat. We always appreciate the chats. It gives us things to talk about. Another one right here, Israel. Israel with probably, I think, something that we have been hinting at. K-State is still developing. That's scary. The experience of playing in environments like BYU, amazing fans in Colorado, will show on later in the season. And Monty, it helps them the rest of the way. It helps them next week, kind of what we talked about. They've taken the bad. That was BYU. They've taken the good. That was Colorado. If they play bad, it can look like BYU. If they play good, they can still win. I think Colorado, first of all, I don't believe BYU and Colorado play this year, which is unfortunate because talk about the opposite ends of the spectrum. Those teams are completely different from each other, but I'd be fascinated to see how that game would go. But those are two tough places to win. Like, I don't think very many people are going to be able to walk into Provo and win. I don't think very many people are going to be able to walk into Boulder and win. And so great point there by Israel talking about the fans. But as we kind of start to wind things down here, Monty, we've got to talk about the rushing attack. And I know we've talked about the sacks, but negative 29 yards rushing. Understand that in college, sacks count as rushing yards, which a lot of people don't like that. I think it is what it is. It's the way it is. So that's what we're going to have to treat it like that. But to have negative rushing yards, I mean, from a defensive perspective, you literally cannot get any better than that.
Yeah, take away the sacks. I'm not sure what the numbers would be, and people don't want to. People that's don't want to. People sometimes don't look at this. Whenever Colorado got the ball and tried to run up the middle, we were stuck, and it wasn't like they were falling forward. They were falling backwards. They may get a yard, we make contact. They were falling backwards. So that speaks a lot about our D line, the pride they took in their job, and our linebackers filling the holes like they always do. We got to get a lot better because we're going to face a couple of backs in the next 3 or 4 games that are really good. West Virginia, KU, they got some good backs. So this was good for us because we need to understand we are young and we are getting better. But yes, we did a great job on stopping the run. And like that, with that being said, that forced Colorado in the passing, and it was in our favor having more guys back and up front on the line to defend the pass when we could. They got their plays still, but we also made plays on the flip side. But yes, stopping the run is key. Now, if you think about it, if Colorado could have stopped our run, how much of a difference would that have made for the game?
Right.
But they weren't. So,
yeah.
Yep.
K-State's ability to run the football, I truly believe, won them the game, because if they were forced to be one-dimensional, you're not going to be one-dimensional, because not only are you not built to throw the ball like that, but you're also on the road. And so things tend to roll downhill, shall we say. And it would have been bad, but especially with Avery Johnson after he got hurt, the quarterback run game was completely off the table. So take that, throw it out of the window. I know people have been in the comments asking why Avery Johnson didn't run that much. Well, if you had a bruised hip and could barely walk, you probably wouldn't want to do much running either. And I think that's kind of what happened with Avery, was just, you know what, we're going to lean on DJ, we're going to lean on Dylan, and then we're going to lean on that right arm of Avery Johnson. And again, I go back to this, Monty, like, this is good for them in more ways than one. And I think it's good for them from an offensive standpoint, because they showed that they can win the game by running the football. And they also showed that when it mattered most, they can make the deep plays down the field to win. That secondary was supposed to be a strength. Now, I understand Travis Hunter was out. We've gone over that and we've talked about that. But again, that is what Colorado built itself on, was getting skill guys. Deion Sanders was a cornerback. If he would not bring in any cornerbacks who he didn't think were any good. And so to just go man coverage, cover zero across the board, because that's what they did, cover zero across the board, and to beat them at that, that says more about the growth of the Kansas State offense than, honestly, I think anything else does. Because 2-3 weeks ago, we would not be seeing Kansas State throwing the ball down the field in this situation, but here we are.
No, you're right. Offensive wise, we grew up in a hurry, and we had to, and it was in a pressure situation to win a big game. I'm proud of those boys. You know, as a team, we grew up. You know, there was a lot of mistakes made by the coaching staff, some of the calls on fourth down. There's certain things that had me guessing. Like I said, I don't know what's going on. I don't know all the injuries. I don't know personnel wise, so I can't really point a finger. But there was some questionable calls from the naked eye. Like I said, I don't know on the back end, so you really can't criticize too much on certain things. But defensive wise, we made a lot of mental errors in the back end. Guys weren't being aggressive. Offensive wise, I feel like the pocket needs to get better. But the big picture is we got to win. You know, and I know we're getting short on time. I want to ask you this, and we talked about it last night a little bit chatting, and maybe somebody else can put a message in there. Why weren't there more reviews of potential targeting?
Yeah.
Because I saw last night 3 times that should have been targeting called against Colorado that were not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So I know the hit on from Shiloh Sanders to DJ Giddens, I want to say that might have been in the first half. DJ was kind of going down towards the ground. It sure looked like that it was a hit at the head or neck area.
With the elbow.
Yeah. And then there was a play, I think maybe Jaden Jackson, when he came back into the game, was reaching for the first down. Yep. I thought that was a clear, leading of the crown of the helmet. I don't know. And there was a lot of reviews in this game. And so yeah. It was strange. But again, I think it just goes back to that physical nature, Monty. Like, I mean, this was a physical game. And both teams. And I was surprised. I think that the targeting rule in college football has become flawed. And I don't think either one of us want to see a kid have to come out of the game because he hit somebody too hard. But it should still be a penalty if you are hitting at the head or the neck area. And I agree that I'm sure. And we saw some of the coaches on the sideline very frustrated about that. Again, as our friend Ben says in the chat, just a very physical game. I think that's right. And another thing that Elliot brings up here is an interesting point. He says the other thing he didn't like was when K-State scored and the refs wouldn't let us celebrate, but when Colorado scored, they could do whatever. Again, I've said this to people, but you know what? Sometimes the officials know that when it's prime time, it's for prime time. And that just kind of felt like it was the case last night a little bit.
No, and they knew where they were at, and they understood what they were going to get. You know what I mean? K-State, that's, we deserve to celebrate just like they do. It's frustrating, but it is what it is. we got the win. That's a big enough celebration for us right there. But yeah, it is frustrating. Let our kids have fun too. They make plays. And like Big B say, we're on scholarship too. Let us have fun. You know what I mean? Let us do what we do. Y'all can do it. Why can't we do it? But it's all good that we got the win.
Somebody says no more 9:30 games this year. Abe, I agree. I'm over that. Thankfully, K-State won't have to deal with that anymore. They will be back in primetime next weekend on Fox against West Virginia. Monty, before we wrap up the show, closing thoughts on what was just an outstanding win for Kansas State.
You know, last night when I went to bed and this morning when I woke up, I was thinking about the game as a whole and the fact that we got a win. But I couldn't stop thinking about DG. You know, DJ, our guy. We knew, K-State Nation knew.
Yep.
Had in him. But I think we got the attention. He got the attention of a lot more people. I'm so happy for that young man, and I want him to have the best season moving forward. But we let people know that we can be a physical team, and we can run the ball, and we can win games. That's going to come down to it on 3rd and short, or 4th and short, or whenever we need to grind out a game, we can. You know what I mean? And like I said, our boys grew up. Like you said, Avery kind of shined his big night. So I'm excited to see what comes next week when we go to West Virginia to play a good Mountaineers team.
And here we go. Even at the end of the show, we still have Colorado fans that are saying that it was a close Colorado fans. When are you going to learn the game is over? You lost. Go home. It's like the end of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. What are you doing here? It's over. You can go home now.
Hold on. He said that you won a close game acting like it was a blowout. Shador still torched you. He torched us. You know what? Yep. But at the end of the day, that flame is out.
Yeah, that's right. That is exactly right.
That flame is out. We got that W.
Colorado fans, appreciate you watching, but more importantly, thank you to K-State Nation for getting up with us this morning after the win. The Kansas State Wildcats beat the Colorado Buffaloes 31-28. Thanks everybody so much for watching. This has been the GoPowercat postgame podcast. We'll be back next week for the Friday walkthrough. Monty and I will be back next week for the Friday walkthrough as we will preview Kansas State and West Virginia. Kansas State gets a dub. They are now in the driver's seat, potentially, to be back in the Big 12 championship game. A lot of game to go, a lot of season to go. But the win in Boulder was one for the ages. Thanks, everybody, so much for watching. And we'll talk to you next week.